Welcome into Post Game Live. This is April 21st, 2015, a game between the Orioles and the Blue Jays, which, let's just say, didn't go incredibly well. I am Jake English from Bird's Eye View, joined tonight by Scott Magnus, also of the Bird's Eye View podcast, and also by Mark Brown of Camden Chat. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, I guess. I mean, terrible game. So let's get right to the great details and numbers.
Angst brings out the best in Orioles fans. I don't know about the best, but angst brings out a certain side of Orioles fans that you don't get otherwise.
We won't stop. We won't stop. Oh, unless they scored 13 runs against us.
They stopped. They stopped in a hurry. All right, well let's do this. We usually go through and go through some of the not so lovely totals when they lose, and so I want to go ahead and start with what I thought was the main event, and that was Orioles pitching. You have 2.1 innings from Bud Norris, who also picked up the loss, gave up 9 earned runs. Brian Matusz gave a crucial 3 innings, gave up 2 earned runs. Jason Garcia gave an interesting 1.2 innings, gave up 2 earned runs, and Brad Brock pitched an inning. As far as the Orioles are concerned, the lineup did its work. The lineup scored 6 runs, hits up and down the order, 2 coming from Manny Machado, or 2 RBIs coming from Manny Machado, who also had a bunt single. On the other side, it would take years and cost millions of lives to read through the Blue Jays offense. Let's just say there was a lot of it, and Mark Burley got himself through 6 innings and picked up the win. And with that, let's go ahead and look at it. Who is your? Let's go through our highlights for this game. Scott, you're up first. What do we have?
Highlights from this game? Do we have to use this game? Okay, I guess the highlights from this game was. I have no highlights from this game. This game was an absolute dumpster fire of epic proportion. The only thing I can come back is Jim Palmer did reply to me in Twitter tonight regarding a comment that I made. So that's my highlight for the night.
Fair enough. Mark, what did you have for a highlight for tonight?
Well, I would say the highlight is that a herd of moose did not break into Rogers Center and trample the entire Orioles roster. That's really the best we can say,
That's very well put, actually. See, that's the kind of insightful commentary that we look from our guests. So thanks, Mark, for bringing that out.
Yeah, I mean, you got to fear maybe somebody's going to get gored on one of the antlers or something, but tonight was not the night, so that's really all you can ask for.
Mooses are thought to be docile creatures, but really couldn't be further from the truth. Very aggressive creatures. You got to be careful of them.
I'll tell you what was ugly, though, that whole turf situation. I was skeptical that it was really as bad as people were saying, but that was the voice of ignorance that had not seen the truth. Because obviously there were a lot of things going wrong with the Orioles tonight, but I mean, you can't tell me that all the problems were not. Well, some of the problems were exacerbated by this, whatever it is with that new turf up there. Because I mean. It's not a coincidence that it was the first game where every time the ball bounced, something awful happened.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting seeing all that filler come out of the turf like that, and really just exemplifies the aspect of Toronto really not getting that turf into game-worn condition before the season started. But it was interesting even just to see the Blue Jays fielders struggle in terms of range and depth in the outfield to a certain regard, too. I'm not going to write that off completely with the Travis Snyder errors that he had a multitude of this game, but I do agree with Mark on this. The Orioles are going to have to figure out why was there so many defensive miscues, and I don't think we can fully boil it on just it was the turf. This is 2 games in a row where the Orioles have had multiple errors in a game, so...
Yeah, and the turf certainly did not cause them to give up a home run that broke through the roof by Edwin Encarnacion and his freaking invisible parrot trot. Just like, give you one of these. I don't need to see that anymore, and I saw it twice tonight, and I'm very disappointed by that.
I'm afraid that when I close my eyes tonight, I'm going to see it. We can do this a little easier. The highlights were difficult. Let's talk about the lowlights. It seems in a game in which the Orioles got their doors blown off, this should be easier to collect. Mark, what was your lowlight for this game?
Well, you knew it was going to be one of those games because we were in the second inning and Jim Hunter said, and now here in the second inning we've got Brian Matusz throwing in the bullpen, or whatever his exact words were. I mean, like I think it's just an automatic. If you have Brian Matusz throwing in the second inning, something horrible has happened.
That is definitely not encouraging. Scotty, what about you?
I'm going to have to go back to the back-to-back walks that Bud Norris gave up during the second inning, loading the bases, and knowing Orioles baseball as well as we know it, bases loaded for the Orioles for the past week has been absolutely devastating. So obviously, when the Blue Jays come to the plate with bases loaded, it works great in their favor for them to plate some runs. So Bud Norris walking back-to-back batters to load the bases is a killer situation, and comes back to the issues that he's been having so far during spring training and the regular season with command at this time.
Yeah, my low light for this particular game was that it was over by the third inning. It was all over but the shouting. Once the Orioles got down by all those runs, you knew how it was going to play out. And I think that's really frustrating baseball to watch, and it's frustrating especially because I feel like that's how Orioles baseball was during the dark period. During the 2010, for instance, the Orioles would get down by a run or two or three, and you're like, well, this game is over. I know exactly how it's going to play out for the next 5 innings or whatever. And that was exactly the thing tonight. So didn't love that. But let's go ahead and break down, if we must, some game notes. We want to start with the offense, and again, we could go all night and talk about the Blue Jays offense. But let's talk about some things that we saw from the Orioles. Let's talk about the second inning, because the Orioles had given up, Bud Norris had given up some runs in the second inning, and the Orioles came back and countered with a few of their own. It looked like the game might not be lost after all. Scott, what did you see in that second inning?
Just a great performance by the bottom of the order. Ryan Flaherty doing a great job. Caleb Joseph doing a great job. A lot of productive outs, moving runners over, kind of fighting themselves back into that game, getting it to be within 6-2, and you're like, okay, early enough, might be able to be a comeback. One of the things that I mentioned was last year Chris Tillman came out and got behind in the game 6-1, and lo and behold, the Orioles were able to come back on a grand slam by Nelson Cruz and take the lead and actually win that game 10-8. It just was a situation where the Orioles could never get a substantial inning like the Blue Jays did during that second inning, and were never able to come back.
Davis getting thrown out at the plate certainly didn't help them get an extended rally.
No, but I actually thought that was a pretty good send on Bobby Dickerson's part. With it being bobbled out there, I just thought you got to make a play out there and see what happens. I've got no issue with, you can't second guess Bobby Dickerson with all the great sends he does make.
He's right so often. I think I tweeted out tonight that he finally got burned tonight, because it feels like he always makes terrible sends that work out at least okay. It seemed like the Orioles kept trying to claw their way back into the game, didn't it? I mean, Mark, they kept us interested throughout the rest of the game by putting on these mini rallies or stringing together some hits and scoring a couple runs. Was there anything offensively that they did tonight that was in some way comforting to you for what was going on?
Well, I mean, scoring 6 runs and getting 12 hits is comforting in a way. I mean, most nights that's going to win the game, just not when you give up 13 runs.
Yeah, exactly. There still has to be a major concern, though, for Steve Pearce. Batting second in that order and still having no hits. He is scuffling hard right now, and I'm not sure what is going on with him, but they're either going to have to drop him in the order or... And I don't even know who they would put in the second hole because no one else is hitting really great at this time anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you would pretty much just have to move up Machado and just kind of hope. But Pierce, what did he get? 2 home runs in that first series, and he's still sitting on 2 home runs. And here we are, 11 games later.
And it's so weird too, because again, if you look at his bat and ball profile, I know it's early in the season, but he's hitting a lot of line drives. He has over 20% line drives, but he's just not getting the balls to be, for hits. So his ex-BABIP and his BABIP is just killing him right now. So I think he's going to turn it around soon. It's just a question of how long do you wait with him in that number 2 spot before you have to move him down and say, all right, get your success in the number 6 or number 7 hole, and then we'll bring you back up to the number 2 spot.
I'm really glad that you said that, Scott, because one of the things I was going to say, and I think you said it far more eloquently, was that Pearce doesn't look lost at the plate.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he's having good at-bats. I feel like he's putting good swings in the ball, and when he hits that ball, foul, and it shimmies off the inside of the, off the sweet spot, I feel like with a slightly better swing, he'd really have something there. So I do think that it's worth keeping him in the lineup at least, part-time and moving him down in the order. You ask who should hit second. What about your boy Ryan Flaherty?
No. Absolutely not. There's no question Ryan Flaherty should never bat second.
See, Ryan Flaherty should be like the Spanish Inquisition in that nobody expects him. So if you put him second, suddenly you're expecting him. But you just can't put him at the bottom, and then anything he does is gravy.
Correct, exactly. He's a eighth hitter, or even a ninth hitter, and I agree with Mark. It's just gravy. If you get it, great. It's similar to like Caleb Joseph. Yes, Caleb Joseph is doing amazingly offensively, but there's no way in the world I would move him up into the second spot. He's the seventh, eighth, or ninth hitter at this time, and will always be.
All right. Well, I don't want to do it, but I wanted to move on to the Blue Jays. Before I moved on to the Blue Jays, is there anything from the offensive side of the ball that we haven't talked about tonight that I've skipped over?
Well, they went 0 for 9 with runners in scoring position. That's one way to lose a game.
Yeah, that's typical Orioles baseball, though. So.
Yeah, but it's typical, like, again, 2007 Orioles baseball. It was throwback. This was a throwback game. It was the warm embrace of Orioles history.
Okay.
The Blue Jays were impressive, or the Orioles pitching was really unimpressive, depending on which way you want to look at it. I want to talk about that Encarnacion home run, which may not yet have landed. I'm pretty sure he hit it out of Canada.
1 second, let me ask my parrot. Yeah, he said it landed finally.
It was the biggest home run ever.
That was a bad whistle. Let's pretend I didn't do that. Everyone who saw that, just forget about it.
Just mute it out of your ears, yes.
No, but seriously, like, allegedly a baseball was picked out of the fifth deck by 2 fans who had to run over like 7 sections because there was nobody up there. But we can't know that baseball was not planted ahead of time.
Those sneaky Canadians would probably do something like that.
I don't know how deep this rabbit hole goes, but I'm not believing that baseball actually landed in that spot.
The worst part about that home run was that the pitch right beforehand was a strike, and it would have been strike 3, and the next pitch was a massive home run, just epically huge. It was Nelson Cruzian in its proportions. It was a large home run. I want to save one of the other home runs in this particular game for a later section. So if it's all right, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the defense that we saw in the game. There was some leather flashed and there was some leather flushed tonight. First of all, let's talk a little bit about the Orioles outfield. Was it my imagination, or Mark, did Delman Young do a passable impression of an outfielder tonight?
I mean, he was certainly better than Snyder. I mean, he made a couple strong throws, and he was the only one who caught every ball that went in his direction, it seemed like. There was no Delman Young trying to climb the fence as the ball was landing next to him on the fence. Although I don't know that Delman Young could climb the fence if he even wanted to try. But
all right, I've got a weird question here, and it's something that's bothering me. Jake, put on your earmuffs because we're going to go and talk statistics now, and we're going to talk UZR. So I was looking at the UZR 150 for Travis Snyder, and last year, right field, -25, left field, +25. Mark, is there any reason why that would be the case, and maybe Travis Snyder shouldn't be playing right field for the Orioles? Maybe he should be playing left field instead?
I mean, so what do they say? You need to look at 3 years of defensive data and really make any conclusions. So I don't know what his years before that looked like off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely doesn't have 3 years worth of data in both positions. It's probably closer to maybe a year's worth of position in both positions for left field and right field. So I think that to a certain regard, you're probably right. It's a sample size issue.
But I mean, to some extent, like I think there are maybe even most stadiums where it just works out that left field is an easier assignment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, think Fenway Park, pretty much all you got to do there is be able to play the ball off the monster. There's not really as much to deal with, like, what's your range.
Well, I'll tell you what, you can go and mentor Hanley Ramirez if you want, because he needs all the help he can get right now, because apparently it's not that easy.
Well, I don't know that I could mentor anybody on anything to do with baseball. But
let's not get carried away here, okay? You've got a lot of skills.
I would intentionally give him bad advice since he's on the Red Sox. I could certainly do that.
You could teach him how to whistle like a parrot.
I could.
So we did not enjoy Travis Snyder's night in the field. Another ball that bounced off of his glove. And
what made that even weirder is he's the former Blue Jay, and this is what he looks like in the Rogers Center. I mean, I guess it was just a bad night, and maybe it was the turf. But
Let's go ahead and talk about that turf. There were a couple plays that were turf inspired. Let's call it that way. Everett Cabrera made a dandy of a play to end Blue Jays rally. One of their 600 rallies during this game, where they had loaded the bases and he went and got a ball in the middle. And it was interesting because I think he had the time to go and get it in the middle because the ball plays slow on this new turf, and because it plays so slow, if that had skirted into center field, it would have been real trouble. It's probably scoring 2 runs. So I thought, for one, it was interesting the way that this new playing surface has been affecting the game, and is it an advantage to Toronto in any way? Is it the fact that both clubs are playing the same environment and need to make the adjustments? What's the deal?
I think it comes back to the fact that Everett Cabrera is doing a great job as a shortstop with replacing J.J. Hardy and is really showing that range that he was basically, why he was actually signed here. So I'm not going to give it to the turf, and I'm not going to give it to anything. I just think that Everett Cabrera made a really nice range play on that play to get the outs.
I mean, Jake, as far as your question about is it an advantage for Toronto, I think it will eventually be one because they get more chances to adjust to whatever's going on there. Like they're going to play 81 games there, whereas every other team is there for, 2 or 3 series a year tops. So maybe not in April, it doesn't matter, but certainly by like July, I think it'll matter more.
Well, we're busy losing games in April, which is something that the Orioles had been good at in the past.
Even last year, they were only 500 at the end of April, right? So.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Wanted to ask a quick question about Caleb Joseph. Caleb Joseph's errant throw in the 4th inning cost a run. And what have we seen defensively from Caleb?
Misapplied tag as well.
Yeah. But I feel like we have been pleasantly surprised by his performance at the plate. But behind the plate, what are we seeing? Are there trends that have shown up in this particular game, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask.
I mean, Caleb Joseph, I don't think has ever been a great tagger as compared to Matt Wieters, but he's been great in terms of throwing out runners just like Matt Wieters, and his plate presence too with presenting pitches is much better than Matt Wieters. So if we're just going to pick out an occasional situation where he, has a bad game or something like that, that's fine. But we can pick out a game that Adam Jones has a bad game. We can pick a game out that Manny Machado has a bad game. Let's go back to the game yesterday where Machado should have got in front of that ball going to third base and he didn't. We're going to say, Manny Machado, maybe not such a good defensive player. I think you're basically making a mountain of the molehill if you want to take it that approach. I think Caleb Joseph is a above average defender. I take him in a heartbeat any day.
I mean, he's very good at blocking the plate without running afoul of the rules that cause a runner to be automatically safe. So in our sample size so far this year, he's yet to throw out a runner. Of course, last year he threw out 40%, and he was over 50% for a while. So I don't know how much of that is like, well, Caleb hasn't been making as good throws, or how much of it is, Orioles pitchers are just kind of not, other than Tillman, probably not doing very well at holding them or something.
When you say holding them or something, I think you mean they're not very good at anything related to pitching at the major league level.
Ouch.
Well, that's certainly how it's working out so far. In fact, Orioles pitchers, I believe, have thrown the 4th fewest innings of any team in baseball, and they actually might get passed by 2 other teams who played 1 fewer game going into tonight. Their games aren't resolved as we're doing this right here. So they may end up at 29th out of 30 in starting pitcher innings by the end.
Well, another key category is that they lead the league in breaking my heart, which is something that I'd like them to put a stop to. Last thing that I had about defense, and then I'll kick it off to you guys. Pilar's play that ended the Orioles' last best chance, in which he caught that ball in left field and then doubled up Chris Davis at second. That was an incredible play, right? That's one of those plays where you just have to tip your cap. There's really nothing a whole lot more than you can do than that, right?
Yeah, just really great defender all across the board. So it's nice to have those kind of players. So great job. Let's just not have that happen again for the rest of the series.
It's the kind of thing where you're glad that you see him so much because he's in the AL East, because that style of baseball is so fun and entertaining to watch, but you hate when it happens to your guys.
I mean, Kevin Pillar with that running catch just last week where he climbed for the ball and saved a home run too. I mean, you know how good Kevin Pillar is. Just looking at some of those performances, I think the league is going to start to take notice of how good Kevin Pillar is, and it just further shows, how nice it is to have really good defensive outfielders.
Like Delman Young.
Like Delman Young, yeah, exactly. Or
at least Kevin Pillar is not a Royals outfielder, because honestly,
Yeah.
if that kind of crap had happened during the ALCS last year, like I don't know that I might be in jail right now because I would have gone postal,
I recommend listening to a lot of Chad and Jeremy. That's how you get through that. All right, we've been stalling, but we have to do it. We have to talk about the pitching. Let's do it. Mark, Bud Norris, what happened tonight? What did you see?
I mean, it's really just been a continuation of what we've seen from him since spring training, right? Because he never had a good spring outing, and every time the quotes from Norris and pitching coach Dave Wallace would be like, "Well, you just got to wait until the regular season and the competitive, not an exact quote, obviously, but he would emphasize that you got to wait for the regular season for the competitive aspect."
Sure, that always works.
And like it was like, okay, you just got to wait till it counts, and then a switch will be flicked. Which I'm sure there's players where that's the case.
Kevin Millwood, for example.
There's a name I did not need to hear tonight. And if the Orioles game had not ruined my night enough, you've ruined it even further.
The Orioles game was good enough for a Kevin Millwood reference. You're welcome.
That's fair. That's fair to say. But like you said earlier, I mean, fastball command has been a problem. He walked 3 guys in 2 1/3 innings. Like, how do you even do that? Can you do that if you try to do that? And 6 hits. So when it's in the strike zone, well, they know what's coming, and they're hitting it a long way.
He got out of the first inning without, burning like the Hindenburg, which I thought was encouraging. But in the second inning, he showed what has been his true stripes this season. Scott Magnus, is this a mental thing? Is it all in his head? Is it a physical thing, or his mechanics awry? What is the deal with Bud Norris?
I saw a few people post. I think Abby Miller posted something on Twitter saying that mechanics look perfectly fine. I certainly am not a big mechanics person. I'm going to take a look at it probably tomorrow around Brooks Baseball and take a look to see if anything is up. But honestly, he doesn't look that different. The velocity is similar. So I'm going to go to the point that I just don't think he's got a feel for his pitches right now. I think it's a lot more mental and just touch and feel as more so than it is depreciation of velocity or depreciation of horizontal movement or vertical movement as well. So I think it's something that is eventually going to get better. It's a question of how long do the Orioles have to go till he gets better.
Yeah, and this is a guy who has a track record, so it's not like he's incapable of doing it, and it seems like a very odd time in his career for him to fall off the shelf. I do think that Bud Norris can be saved in this particular season. Obviously we've seen, 3 starts now, but it is very concerning at this point, very concerning.
I mean, I posted about this during the offseason saying Bud Norris was coming off a career season, probably a good opportunity to go and trade him. He is hitting 30 years old this year. I'm not saying that that's a perfect point for a decline, but, Bud Norris has had issues in the past. I mean, he hasn't been, as good of a pitcher as he was last year. So people want to come out and say, oh, he's a 15-win pitcher. Yeah, that's great, but again, wins are not what we should be looking at. We should be looking at strikeout efficiency, and we should be looking at walk efficiency. His strikeout rate has never been good, and now that his walk rate has elevated, you're just dealing in a danger zone. In my opinion, if he can't get the walks straightened out, he's got to go to the bullpen now.
I think maybe I don't know if it's why, but I mean, one explanation could be if there's some kind of secret injury he's not really disclosed, and maybe if an Orioles reporter unearthed it, then that would prompt Buck Showalter to go on a profane tirade like the Reds manager did. No, he wouldn't do that even if that happened. But I mean,
he would just get sassy.
What else would make him that all of a sudden? Like maybe it's okay, he needs to get the feel, but maybe there's something that's just not quite right, and
so what you're saying,
either trying to hide it or he's not trying to hide it or something.
So what you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that Bud Norris needs to go to the same parking lot that Ubaldo Jimenez went to last year to find himself a pothole and to spend some time on the DL to get right. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, yeah, and one of my things I have wondered is we can't say that for sure that Dan Duquette personally caused that pothole. with a jackhammer, but we can't say that he didn't. And I mean, if I was Bud, I would keep an eye out and park my car in different spots every day. Because
what Mark Brown is trying to say is, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck.
I like it. Well, Mark, you brought it up before. Your boy Brian Matusz warming up in the second inning. What did you see from Brian Matusz tonight?
well, I saw the Brian Matusz I pretty much expect to see, which is not so good. I mean,
He
okay,
was who you thought he was.
yeah, that's exactly what you could say. He was who I thought he was. I mean, like he gave up 7 hits in his 3 innings, and it's great. They were trying to talk it up on the broadcast, like, well, Brian Matusz could really be saving the team for the rest of this series with this outing, and I suppose that's true. He made sure by going 3 innings that none of the quote unquote real relievers needed to be used for any extended amount of time. But he gave up 7 hits in 3 innings when it was probably in the Blue Jays were in blowout hackathon mode. Like if that's your time to breeze through it, and still he labored and ended up being. It could have been worse if the runners that he stranded or that he left on base when he got pulled from the game ended up scoring.
He really just doesn't have anything that just wows you as a pitcher. If you looked at his command tonight,
Besides his ERA.
yeah, besides you look at his command and everything was in the zone, and it's great. It's like great, you're pounding the strike zone, but you're putting it pretty much right in the middle of the plate, so you're putting it in an area where the batters are going to either make contact and basically make you hurt. And we've talked about Brian Matusz succeeding potentially with a weak contact pitch, but Brian Matusz does not have that weak contact pitch right now, and I just don't see any value whatsoever with him as a long man. So I kind of agree with Mark. The only benefit that you could have possibly seen from him tonight is he saved the rest of the real bullpen from having to do additional work.
All right, Jason Garcia. Jason Garcia got off the milk carton yesterday in Boston, and here he is at Toronto in a terrible situation, pitching. What's the deal with Jason Garcia as far as his use? Is he going to be used at this point? I mean, are the training wheels off, or was it just a situation of Buck Showalter was trying to save the rest of the pen and went to the Rule 5 guy that didn't have any intention in a high leverage situation anyway?
I mean, I just don't see Jason Garcia having the stuff necessary to stay in the league at this time. Spring training wise, velocity was upper 90s, and now he's mid 90s at best. I mean, he was a single A pitcher last year. If he can't have that high 90s velocity, he's not going to make it in the Major League Baseball for the entire season, nor should the Orioles keep him on their bullpen as well. So I think the eventual demise of Jason Garcia is coming to an end very quickly. If it's not, in the next few days, I don't think it's going to be much more than another week or so.
Like, what was it, a couple days ago in the Baltimore Sun, they were pretty much openly being like, look, what is he doing? He's not pitching, so why are you bothering to carry him on the team? And I mean, when even that crew is starting to ask some questions like that, it's you got to figure.
Yeah,
it's getting something.
Yeah, when the Baltimore Sun is asking questions, it's a bad sign.
So I thought I read in that article that Buck Showalter said something about how they'd had him throwing between appearances and they were starting to see encouraging signs. Whatever. They got to put a positive spin on it. That's their job. But I mean, we certainly haven't seen that. We haven't seen it in action, and what we have seen is really a lack of command that. I apologize, Jake, if I'm jumping the gun here, but his lack of command and throwing behind Jose Bautista's back is probably going to have a reverberating effect on the rest of this series.
All right, that's a perfect time to bring it up. I'm going to ask you.
You mentioned earlier it was all over, but the shouting, and as it turned out, there was a lot of shouting.
Let me ask you, intentional or not?
I mean, he can't throw. He doesn't know how to throw a strike. How could it be intentional? He can't. He doesn't know where the ball's going.
Exactly. He's a single A pitcher with relative little command. It definitely wasn't intentional. It was the same thing with Jimenez throwing inside. It's just like, it hit him. What do you mean he got thrown out?
I get that it looks bad, and I get why a team and their fans would be frustrated. But like I'm not going to believe he did it on purpose. Like it's just it's remotely possible, but it's just no.
Can't
I
you
mean, you
see
saw what
that?
happened. All you did was make him mad, and then he hit a home run, and then took like 45 seconds to round the bases, and in the process made Adam Jones mad for possibly the first time I ever remember seeing.
But there's bad blood between the Orioles and Jose Bautista. I mean, look at
Darren
Darren
O'Day.
O'Day hit him with like a 54-mile-an-hour fastball. So clearly that means that Jason Garcia, who was in single ball at the time or single A ball at the time, was simply going after him because it happens in baseball, right?
I think they're going to retaliate tomorrow when there's not warnings involved. And in fact, I think that Buck Showalter maybe was worried it was going to happen tonight because it's probably not a coincidence. He pulled Jones from the last inning, and Jones, that spot in the order, would have been the last batter of the game. I think that was
Yeah, that's
saving it for tomorrow.
definitely good foresight. It was also interesting that in between innings, and Masson showed this on the broadcast, in between innings, Jose Bautista and Adam Jones had a little tete-a-tete about it. And if you were any good at reading lips, you got the substance of the subtext rather of the conversation. I think it's
Not
ludicrous.
suitable for family programming. I don't know if this counts as family programming. It's my first time here, but we won't repeat it all the same.
It's all right. Nobody's watching. It's ludicrous to
I've
me
been fearing that.
to think that anybody could think that it was intentional. It's also ludicrous to me that it's probably going to leak into tomorrow. So I think that was actually probably why Buck Showalter came out himself to talk to Jason Garcia, not only to calm him down, but to also say, look, if you don't get it under control, you're putting your teammates at risk here. So definitely an interesting coda to a game that was over in the third inning. Is there anything else from this awful show that we can bring up before we get to our bottom line takeaways?
Nope. Bottom line takeaways.
All right, let's do it.
I think we've covered this mess pretty thoroughly, to our eternal regret.
Mark, what is your bottom line takeaway from this particular game?
You know, I made a rookie mistake, and I used my bottom line takeaway before now, because I guess I'll just re-emphasize it. The starting pitching not going deep into games is really going to become a problem soon if it's not a problem already. Like I said, they could end up tonight with the second fewest innings thrown by their starters in all of baseball, and eventually that's going to tax your bullpen, especially when it's a bullpen that's what was it, 2 games all year they've gone without allowing a run, and that was the 2 games they won in the Red Sox series.
Yep.
So, you know, if you don't have your reliable stalwarts out there and you're relying on them for more and more innings, it will quickly start to become a problem, especially with Garcia being the milkman pitcher.
Well, aren't you the bluebird of happiness when it comes to the pitching staff? Scott Magnus, what is your bottom line takeaway for a particular game?
Bottom line takeaway is Adam Jones is still in fuego right now, 2 for 4 in the night, and just absolutely just doing an amazing job offensively at the plate. And with a little bit of fire in his belly from the Jose Bautista thing, I'm thinking it's going to be a big series for him for the rest of this trip. So Adam Jones is my bottom line takeaway. Love to see the fire, and I also love to see how well he's doing offensively at the plate.
All right, Adam Jones is also my bottom line takeaway, and in this way, I was really disappointed with what I saw from Jose Bautista and his reaction. I thought that he did a really good David Ortiz impression at showing that he can act petulantly when he feels like he is being disrespected, and I think that is a terrible way to go about baseball. So here it is with Adam Jones, who will certainly be at least thrown toward. Tomorrow he has every chance to show how you're supposed to react and how Major League Baseball is supposed to react. So I'm going to hold him accountable. I'll beat him up if he acts like a child if tomorrow gets rough. So Adam Jones has to leave this club tomorrow, and I'm curious to see how he'll handle that. And I think that an intelligent fan base, like what I hope the Orioles is becoming, will know that if he behaves like that, it's not something to be proud of. With that, let's talk about tomorrow. We again have the Toronto Blue Jays in that wonderful stadium on that wonderful carpet. It's Ubaldo Jimenez versus Aaron Sanchez. Scott, can you tell me anything about Aaron Sanchez, or is there just not enough out there on him?
Well, I mean, there's a little bit on him. He's definitely starting for, this is his first season as a starter. Last year he was with the Blue Jays for 33 innings. Extreme ground ball pitcher. But so far to start the season, really ineffective in terms of command. Pretty much an equal strikeout rate to a walk rate, so that's never a good sign. So the Orioles are going to have to be patient at the plate and kind of feel him out to a little regard. But the other thing that I think is interesting is not a lot of data here because, again, just has been in the league for 2 years. But Chris Davis has been absolutely amazing against him. He's 3 for 3 with 1 single and 2 home runs. So hopefully Chris Davis has a breakout night tomorrow night, and the Orioles are able to tack some runs onto the Blue Jays. But the Orioles just need to be patient at the plate and just get a feel for Aaron Sanchez and maybe draw some walks.
When have you ever known the Orioles to be patient at the plate?
They've gotten better this year, actually, of looking at some of the...
I noticed that, too. I hope that continues. I don't know that it will, but...
Yeah, I read a whole article about it on Bird's Eye View Baltimore, just saying it looks like they're trying to get better, but it's still so early in the season and sample sizes are so small. But even Adam Jones is not being as reckless as he's been at the plate. Of course, Chris Davis is following it up by being very aggressive at the plate and striking out a lot. So
he only struck out once tonight. That's progress.
Hey, all right, there we go. Well, hopefully tomorrow night he strikes out none and just hits a lot of home runs.
I would take it.
Yes.
Well, those are the not-so-lovely totals, and we managed to get through a post-game show without reading any of the Mars ads. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Before we get out of here, I just want to thank everybody for showing up, including Mark Brown of Cannon Chat. What can you tell us about what's going on in Cannon Chat this week?
Well, I don't think anybody knows yet because we'll probably think of it the night before. But you can always go to CanvasChat.com, especially during weekdays. There will be many and varied articles with lively discussion with fellow Orioles fans you can find. And hopefully you will agree, and if you disagree, you can come and tell us how dumb we are.
Hopefully we can get to Friday, get a win against the Red Sox, so we can have a nice animated gift party going on.
Ah, that's right. Every Friday the Orioles win, we get the victory gift party, and people come and they post their gifts of people celebrating, and it's one of my favorite traditions of the site. Unfortunately, the Orioles don't always win on Friday, but
they seem to win much more often on Fridays than most other days. So
it's like they know.
It's like they know that we want to post animated pictures to the internet. Let's get this win, boys.
Scotty, what can you tell us about Bird's Eye View this week? We just had an episode drop yesterday, correct?
Yeah, so we had an episode drop on birdseyeviewbaltimore.com yesterday. Jake ponders and discusses all his love affection for the Boston series and for the town of Boston, and is a closet Red Sox fan. So if you want to hear why Jake English is a closet Red Sox fan and not really an Orioles fan, you should check out the most recent episode of Bird's Eye View Baltimore and just listen to how much Jake loves it.
Now, is that actual affection or is that sarcastic affection?
No, actual affection. He loved Boston.
Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty much the end of our podcast. So, Mark, if you're looking to hire someone at Camden Chat, I'll send your resume over.
I've been to Boston once in my life, and my only memory of it is we saw the little statues where the Make Way for Ducklings pond was. That was kind of cool, but I wouldn't say I love Boston.
That did not make my trip. That was not one of the highlights of my trip.
You'll just have to turn into the recent podcast to find out what was some of Jake's highlights. How's that for a teaser?
Thanks. What besides ducks did we do in Boston? All right, that's going to do it here for us at BSR Postgame Live. Sorry we didn't have a better game to discuss. Orioles lose 13-6 in a game that didn't even feel that close. For Mark Brown of Camden Chat, again, thanks for joining us. For Scott Magnus of Bird's Eye View, I'm Jake English. Tune in. We'll be back on Thursday, hopefully with a better result, and we'll see you then.
Good night.